Okay, James Williamson and Deniz Tek, welcome to Australian Musician.
Hey, thanks.
Uh,
Thanks for having.
Before I talk about the new album, 2 to 1, which is coming out, I just want to talk a little bit about rock and roll history, if I can. The Sex Pistols hit the world with their album Nevermind the Bollocks in 1977. The Stooges had been playing for some time before that already, and in fact toured the UK, and I believe Johnny Rotten and Mick from The Clash were in the audience. Back home in Australia, Radio Birdman and the Saints had also predated the Sex Pistols. When punk rock hit, I'll start with you, Deniz. What was the feeling? Was it that we've been doing this for some time already, or were you just happy that this high energy rock and roll was being heard?
Well, there was really two centers of punk when it started. One was in New York, and we'd already been seeing the New York Dolls and Suicide and bands like that. They predated Radio Birdman. This goes back to 72 or 73.
Yeah.
And we thought it was back to like real rock and roll, like raw, sort of rough and ready music, the same kind of music that we were doing. We didn't, when punk actually started, and I guess the first things that we were aware of were things like the Ramones, which to us at that time, we thought it was more of a pop band. And then when the Sex Pistols came out, it sort of gelled into something more defined, and it became a fashion as well as a musical genre. But we thought it was all great. We were sort of felt like we were kind of alone in the wilderness in the mid 70s, doing what we thought was real stuff, and with a lot of stuff that was going on that was kind of bland and boring, and we thought it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. What about you, James? How did you feel when the Sex Pistols hit and were getting all the attention?
Well, just one correction: we didn't tour the UK. We only played one show there.
Oh.
It was the one that those guys came to, ostensibly, we had Raw Power was out long before that, and we, by the time the Sex Pistols were breaking, I was virtually out of music already. So I had already finished, Kill City with Iggy, and we're kind of got nowhere with it, and so I was kind of moving on. So I was not really in the scene anymore, so to speak. But I was happy to see somebody was making it work for them.
Yeah. You come across as a pretty laid-back guy, and Iggy Pop is Iggy Pop. How did you two click as friends?
Oh, we got along, fine when we were getting along, and not so fine when we weren't. We're very strong personalities, and so sometimes, we butt heads, but that goes with the territory.
Yeah. You played some pretty wild shows. I mean, all of Iggy's and the Stooges shows are always wild. Were you kind of protective of each other? Like if Iggy came off stage bleeding, was it like maybe this guy needs a Band-Aid or two?
Well, I can't remember any of that, doing that. I mean, we've always had either roadies or whatever that would do that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. And fortunately, although we had some pretty wild shows, the only times I can recall where like Big would really hurt himself was when he was, the New York show at Max's, where he cut his chest up with broken glass and so forth, and a few things like that. And he has had some bad stage dives from time to time, but that's his deal, and so I'm not gonna tell him no, you can't do that, So it's just that's what he wants to do, and I'm gonna play guitar as hard as I can, make it look good.
Yeah. Dennis, I worked at Juke magazine for almost 10 years, and there was a bit of a rivalry back in the day between Sydney and Melbourne and Juke and Ram magazine. Did Radio Birdman feel that competitiveness between Melbourne and Sydney as well?
No, we thought Melbourne was great. We were always happy to go to Melbourne and play. And, you know, it was just another place that had venues and cool people to play to. I think that the Melbourne and Sydney, it's more, I think it's more on the Melbourne side that people think about it. Sydney people don't really think about it that much.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, when we went down there the first time, we met up with you know, Nick Cave and the boys next door, those guys, and they were coming to the shows, and in fact, later on, when they became very famous, there seemed to be a bit of you know, attitude there on their part anyway.
Yeah. What about you, James? Was there a competitive spirit between Detroit bands and New York bands?
Oh, you know, I don't really know, because by the time we recorded Raw Power, we had gone to London to record it, and then we came to California, and you know, by the time I became aware of the whole scene of New York bands, I was already more relating to California than I was to Detroit.
Yeah.
But so I'm sure there was, but certainly I think personally, I liked the New York bands. I thought they were bringing something cool, but by the same token, there was a lot of bands in California and Detroit too that were cool too. So I wasn't really competitive that way.
Yeah. When you were both young, you got into music, acquired guitars. I imagine you started playing along with songs or writing songs. At what point did you start thinking about tone and which guitar sounds good with which amp? When did that come into play, James?
Well, you know, I think it comes into play right away, because when you first start, you start by trying to play like somebody. And I think the first bands that I was trying to emulate were playing like surf music, you know, the Beach Boys or the Venturers or whatever. And for those bands, you pretty much needed a Fender guitar. In fact, a Fender Jazzmaster or a Jaguar would be preferable. And so that was the sound everybody was shooting for. Later, it became a kind of more aggressive sound. And in that case, that was stuff like, you know, Gibson Les Paul, which is what I picked up, or, you know, lots of maybe a Stratocaster or whatever.
Yeah. You used a Vox AC30 on Raw Power in the studio, but live you played with Marshalls. Why did you change to Marshalls for the live gigs?
Well, I had started out with Marshalls. Marshalls are easy to get. And I switched over because of a recommendation from the engineer at the CBS studios in London. He suggested I might try the AC30, and I just loved it. From there on, that was really my sound, the Les Paul and the AC30. But AC30s aren't really, you know, big amps like Marshalls are, and also they're hard to come by, and they're not very reliable all the time, the old ones anyway. And so when we toured, we just took an airplane into wherever we were going, and the roadies were let loose to go rent whatever they could rent us for that show. So we didn't have our own gear except our instruments. So that's why Marshalls most of the time.
Yeah. Dennis, you're known for playing that wonderful Epiphone Crestwood. Can you just relive and tell us how you acquired that guitar?
Well, I was already playing in bands then. I got that guitar in '73, and I had early in 1973, when the Rolling Stones were on tour in Australia, I had sold my guitar to Keith Richards, and then I had picked up another guitar to play, and just wasn't. It was an SG, and I wasn't really that happy with the SG. I was in a band called TV Jones then, and then so I needed another guitar, and I went back to Ann Arbor for a vacation, or actually to visit my parents on a holiday, and I saw the ad for the guitar. There was this place called Campus Corners in Ann Arbor, and on South University, and they had a bulletin board with all kinds of like handwritten notes that people stick up there, and one of them was, MC5 guitar for sale, and then a phone number, and I went and checked it out, and it was that Epiphone Crestwood, which had been Fred Smith's guitar since it was new. It was a 1966 model, and it was going for cheap. I picked it up and never looked back from that since.
Yeah. And what amps have you favored over the years?
Well, when I first started playing, it was whatever amp I could get. When you're 12 years old or 13 years old, it's like you feel lucky just to have an amp. I had a little Gibson practice amp in those days. And then when you start finding out about other amps and other tones later on. And when I was in TV Jones and the first couple of years of Birdman, I was using Australian-made amplifiers called Phoenix amps, 100-watt Phoenix amplifiers. And then in 77, I switched over to Marshall Mark IIs.
Yeah. You both play an aggressive brand of energetic rock. You played hard in the day. Did any of your guitars come across any grief, damaged or lost?
Well, that Crestwood that you were talking about's had the neck broken off 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with the Leopard Lady, which is the raw power guitar. It also had the neck cracked a couple of times and glued back, and that just goes with the road. That's why I retired it from the road after a while.
Is that the one that is now in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that it deserved to have a place of honor and kind of a retirement, community there.
Yeah. So you've got this album coming out, 2 to 1. First of all, when did you first meet?
Well, I can tell you that other than being a fan, I first met James Williamson in person in April of 2011 when they invited me to do a short set with the Stooges it was a memorial show for Ron Ashton. And that's where I met James for the first time.
Yeah. So I know you've done an EP together, but was this album a long time in the planning, or something that was more off the cuff?
I think it was more, sort of evolved because we had, like you said, we had done an acoustic EP together after we sort of learned that we both were on the Big Island and decided to do it. This one later, I had played on many different things for Cleopatra, and the guy that was instigating all that, Matt Green, suggested, this would be cool for you guys to do it. What do you think? Are you up for it? And so I started discussing it with Dennis, and I think ultimately we both said, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Did you sit down together and write these songs? Were they song ideas that you had laying around? How did that work?
Well, we were both, again, I was in California and Dennis was in Hawaii at that time. And I think the idea was, just let's see what we can come up with. We didn't have any songs at that point, or Dennis might have had a couple, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was sort of like, well, let's kind of divvy up this work. We'll try to at least do half and half on this. And my style of writing is a little bit different from Deniz's. Deniz likes to write the whole song himself, music and lyrics. I like to only write the music, and that's what I've always done, and feel like I'm just not a good lyric writer. And so there was a mixed bag of who wrote the lyrics on the stuff that I wrote the music to, but Deniz wrote completed songs.
Yeah. How did you go about working out the guitar parts, who takes the lead, and so on?
Well, just to add to what James was saying, a lot of the songs that I wrote for this album, I actually started writing for the album when we decided to do it. I was actually in the middle of finishing up songs for my last solo album when we took this project on. So I had to finish up those songs and then write new ones for 2 to 1. And I would just, when I had a rough idea for a song, I would demo it at home and send it to James and get his take on it. And he would then come back with suggestions. Either he would say, that's okay, but it needs a bridge, or that's great. Or he would say, maybe that song's not going to work for this album. So, and we went back and forth like that a lot. And I did get to write some lyrics for some of his tunes as well. But as far as who does the solo, I actually purpose built some of my writing for James, because I thought I would like to create a context or a backdrop for what I would consider to be a classic James Williamson solo. So I wrote some of that stuff with that in mind, and my idea was get him to do solos on all my stuff, but all the writing. And we ended up partially doing that.
Yeah, I guess one of those songs was Liar.
Yeah, that's right. You can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic solo. Yeah. So who were the other guys on the album, and why were they the right fit?
Well, the drummer is somebody that I've used on basically every record I've done since the last Stooges record. So Michael Urbano, and he's just, to my way of thinking, he's like the perfect drummer. And so I was pretty set on bringing him in. I don't think Deniz had any objection to that. And I think once we started playing with him, even Deniz now feels he's solid. So
yeah.
that was a given. And then I had played a festival with Cheetah Chrome last year, and I had guested on playing a few of my songs for him, and the bass player he had picked up, because Cheetah doesn't live in California and the festival was in California, so Michael Scanlon. And I thought he was pretty good, nice guy and pretty good. And I didn't have a bass player, so I figured, you know what, he's as good as anyone I've got. So I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he was thrilled to death. And so we had this core of people who all wanted to do this project, and we all got along really, really well. So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah. Is there a track that you're particularly pleased with?
I'm sorry?
Is there one track that you're particularly really happy with on the album?
You know what, I to be honest with you, and I spent a lot of time listening to this music. I like all of it, but I think there's a few that, that I'm partial to. I like Jetpack Nightmare. I like Stable. I like Good Is Gone. I like No Dreams. There's just so many that I can't. The easier question is, are there any you don't like? And I don't think there are.
Yeah. What about you, Deniz? Is there a song that's closer to your heart than others on the album?
I would echo everything James said about it. I like everything on there, and each song has I think has brilliant moments to recommend it. But I think dear to my heart is Small Change, because number one, it was very difficult for me to get my head around that, and especially the timing of it and how to sing it. And it was like a very difficult childbirth. And then you love the baby even more when it's out, you know. And also it's that Small Change is a side of James's songwriting that maybe a lot of people aren't totally aware of. It's a whole different dimension, that song. So yeah, that'd be my choice for, you know, song of the day.
Yeah. Assuming that the world gets back to normal at some point soon, is this an album that you guys might tour?
You know, everybody is asking that question, and nobody's touring anything at the moment. You know, this year is gone from that, and you know, when next year comes, we just have to see what the terrain's like out there. It might be that the type of gigs that I'm used to doing, and probably James is used to doing as well, might not be possible for quite a long time, you know, where you have 1,000 people crammed together in the front of the stage going crazy and, you know, sharing bodily fluids and things like that. Even when this pandemic's over with, people might see that a little bit differently, you know, going forward. But if it's possible, I'll certainly want to put some of these songs in my own set with my band, and, you know, and if James can join in on some of it, that's great. You know, that's how I see it.
Yeah. So for both of you, what are your revised plans for the rest of this year?
Well, I'm just going as far as these interviews go. You know, there's you know, there's a lot of work behind doing this, rolling out this album, and then beyond that, you know, I'm just going to try to keep it together until we can get this behind us.
Yeah. What about you, Dennis? The rest of the year?
Yeah, same thing. I was supposed to be in Australia this year. I couldn't go, had to cancel a tour, and I have stuff to do over there, so in your country. So I don't think I'll get over there this year, but as soon as I can, I will, and take care of some things over there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's been great to chat, and the album's great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.